Okay, this is the grade 9 final quiz on linear relations. There are 10 questions on the test. The first question of the test says the equation that matches the table will have a coefficient more than 1. Is that true or false? So what we're going to do is we're going to actually look for our equation that shows the relationship between x and y. And the first thing we look for is our coefficient. And to find the coefficient, we can take the difference in the y column divided by the difference in the x column. So if we look here in the y column, we see the difference is 1 each time. And as we look at the difference in the x column, it's 2 each time. So the difference in y is 1. The difference in x is 2, which means 1 divided by 2, if I use my calculator, 1 divided by 2 would be 0.5. So my coefficient is 0.5x, or I can also think of it as half of x. So I don't need to find the constant because the question is just true or false. The coefficient will be more than 1. And since it's 0.5, we know the answer then is false. The coefficient is less than 1. In question 2, it says when graphed, the constant in the linear equation will be where the line crosses the y-axis. So this is a true statement, okay? Because in our equation, let's just take a 2x plus 1 equals y. If I was to make a table of values here, and I was to go x and y, now when x is 0 on a table of values here, when x is 0, the y value will automatically be whatever. So if I substitute x is 0, my constant is really my y value, because by making x 0, you always get rid of whatever that happens to be, and you leave your constant is equal to y. So in this case, y equals 1. And when I graph the other parts, wherever they happen to be, and draw my line, it's true that the constant of my equation, in this case 1, is always going to be where the line crosses the y-axis. In question 3, we're given this graph, and it says create a table of values for the graph and determine the equation. So I'm going to write my xy here first. And the 3 points that I know, if I look carefully, I see that x is 1, x is 2, and x is 3 are the 3 I know. When x is 1, y is 3. When x is 2, y is 7. And when x is 3, y is 11. So our difference here is 4. Our difference here is 1. So remember, the difference in the y divided by the difference in the x will equal your coefficient. So the relationship between x and y, your coefficient will be 4. And now to find your constant, you can do one of two things. You can see where the line crosses the y-axis, but we can't see it. So we know it's not a positive value. But what we're going to do is we're going to take any of these ordered pairs. In this case, I'm going to take the first one. And I'm going to substitute so we substitute 1 for x and 3 for y, because that's what the x value is and that's what the y value is. So I just substitute it in my partial equation. 4 times 1 is 4. The y is 3. So I know these two are not equal, but if I subtract 1, I will create equality, and I will also find what my constant is. So my constant is minus 1. And that kind of makes sense, because if I was to extend it down here, it would cross the y-axis at negative 1. So your equation is this, and your table of values is this. In the fourth question, we're given a different graph. Same question, though. Create a table of values. So I'm going to put x and y here. My first x value I know is actually 0. And when x is 0, y is 2. That's helpful, because when I do my equation, I'm going to know my constant. When x is 2, y is 3. When x is 4, y is 4. And when x is 6, y is 5. So now I have my table of values. The difference here is 1 each time. The difference here is 2 each time. So 1 divided by 2 means my coefficient in the equation that shows the relationship between x and y will be 0.5, or a half. And another way to represent half of x is like this. So I can keep both actually. Now remember what we said in the last question. If your x is 0, your y will be your constant. So I know that it's going to be plus 2. So I know my equation is going to be half of x plus 2 equals y. But I'll show you how to do it. So we'll keep the 0.5x equals y. And we'll substitute that pair in here. So 0.5 divided by, or times 0. And then my y value for that is 2. So my x value is 0, my y value is 2. 0 and 2. 0.5 times 0 is 0, and y is 2. In order to keep those two sides equal, I have to add 2 to both sides. And I have my constant being plus 2. So there's your equation, and there's your table of values. In question 4, it says, given this equation, I'll make it a little bit bigger, given this equation and this graph, it says graph the first coordinates and things. So it says just the equation is all you have. So when you're given just the equation, the first thing you should do is just insert 3 random values for x, usually 0, 1, 2, 3, or 1, 2, 3, or whatever. I put 4 in, that doesn't matter. And when you have your values, substitute each in. So x is going to be the first one, it's 0. Negative 2 times 0 is 0. And 1 will equal y. So when x equals 0, your y value will be 1. When we go ahead and do that exact same thing again, but this time with 1 for x, we're going to get negative 2 times 1 is negative 2. And negative 2 plus 1 is negative 1. So when x equals 1, we have a negative 1 value for y. And now I'm going to substitute 2 there. So negative 2 times 2 plus 1 equals y. Negative 4 plus 1 equals y. And finally, negative 3 equals y. So we can kind of see that it's going down by 2 each time. So I can probably guess without even doing the next work that this is going to be a negative 5. But I'll substitute just to see. So x is 3 here. So substitute 3. That's negative 6 plus 1 equals y. It is negative 5. So there's my table of values. That's how I get my table of values from an equation. And now all I have to do is take those values and graph them. So x is 0, y is 1 is right there. X is 1, y is negative 1 is right there. X is 2, y is negative 3 is right there. And x is 3, y is negative 5 is right there. So if I take my line, put it through there, roughly, that is the line that shows the equation, and that is the table of values. In the next equation, it says this is the equation, make a table of values. So I'm going to put x and y again. I'm going to put 0, 1, 2. I only have to graph 3, it says. So x is 0, so I'm going to substitute 0 into my equation. So instead of being x, I'm going to substitute it as 0, because that's my first value. 0 divided by 2 is 0. And 0 minus 1 is negative 1. So my y value will be negative 1. When x equals 1, I substitute it for where my x was. That's a half minus 1 equals y. That's a negative half equals y. And finally, when I make x 2, I get 0 equals y. So those are my 3 values. 0, negative 1. 0, negative 1 is there. 1, 0.5. Oh, that's not right, sorry. I got that wrong. 0, negative 1 is right here. And then 1, negative 0.5 is there. And 2, oh, I got that wrong too. And then 2 and 0 is right there. So your line is that right there. Question 7. Given this table of values, determine the equation that shows the relationship between x and y and graph it. So here we have a difference of 2 each time. Here we have a difference of 1. So therefore 2 divided by 1 is 2, and that will be the coefficient of my equation. Now that I have my coefficients, substitute your first pair. So 1 is your x and 15 is your y. 2 does not equal 15, but a constant of 13 will keep the two sides balanced, which means that's my equation. Okay? So now what we're going to do is we're going to graph it. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to put a little break here because I don't want to start at 0. I want to start at 15, 17, 19, and 21. I don't have enough space to do it without that. So 115 is here, 217 is here, 319 is here, and 421 is there. Okay. Now notice how I didn't extend it this way because I broke it, that it wouldn't actually cross the y-axis at that point because I broke the line. So there's your graph and there's your equation. Question 8 says, given the table of values, find the graph the points and determine the equation. So this time, I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I have enough space for all those. And I don't have enough space again, so I'm going to break it. And I'm going to start at 10. And each of these spaces is going to be, I can make it either 8 or I can make it 4. I'm going to make it, do I have enough for 4? 18, 26. I think I might. Let's just try it. No, I don't. I don't have enough. So I'll go 18. Yes, I do. Yes, I do. I'm going to go up by 4s. So if 14, 10, 14, 18, 22, 26, 32. Oh, I made a mistake on this thing, didn't I? Did I? 8, 8. Oh, I made a mistake. 4 is only 30 there. So 30 goes here. And 34 goes there, and 38 goes here, and 42 goes there. Really, your graph could be different, but you could still have it graphed properly. So 210 is here. 418 is here. 626 is here. And 834 is here. So there's our line. And our equation, the difference here is 8. The difference here is 2. So 8 divided by 2 means my coefficient will be 4. So I write down x and y. I put 4 here. Substitute your first pair. See if they're equal. They're not equal, but a constant of 2 will keep them equal. So that's your equation that defines every point on this line. Question 9 is your story problem. It says a cheese pizza costs $11 plus $1.50 per topping. Create a table of values, graph the relationship, and label all relevant information. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to say I want the number of toppings and I want my cost. So I want the cost of a 0 topping pizza, which would be $11. A 1 topping pizza, which would be $1.50 more, so it would be $12.50. A 2 topping pizza would be $14. And finally, a 3 topping pizza would be $15.50. Okay, so I'm going to graph that next. So I'm going to put this as T and this is C. This is the number of toppings. I'm going to define my axes and what the numbers are. Number of toppings and the cost in dollars. All right. So with 0, if 1 topping, 2 toppings, and 3, 0 toppings is going to cost me $11. So I'm going to make these, I'm going to probably break this up here and go $11. I think I can probably go $11.50, $12, $12.50, $13, $13.50, $14, $14.50, $15, and $15.50. Okay, that will work. I know it's a little crowded in there, but you get the idea. So the first one is 0 topping pizza will cost me $11. So I'm going to take my 0 topping pizza and put my $11 right there. A 1 topping pizza will be $12.50. A 2 topping pizza will be $14. And a 3 topping pizza will be $15.50. And there's my line for my graph. Okay, now the last thing it does is say create an equation. So the difference here is 1.5, which makes sense because it's the cost per topping. The difference here is 1. So your coefficient will be $1.50. So $1.50 multiplied by the number of toppings equals the cost. Now I have to find my constant. So if I substitute 0 for my t and my cost, which is 11, I'll get 0 equals 11. In order to balance them, I need a constant of 11, which makes sense because if I think about this equation, it's $1.50 per topping, plus it's $11 for the pizza, and when you combine those two, you'll always get the cost. So the last question says a bank offers 2% interest on investments and shown in the graph below. So if it was $100, I got to fix this. Hang on a second. Okay, this works now. So if you invested $100, you would get $2 interest. So let's just take investment and interest, which is your small I, both in dollars. So if you invest $100, you would get $2 in interest. If you invested $200, you would get $4 in interest. If you invested $300, you would get $6 in interest. So if I look here to find my equation, I'm going to find the equation between the amount I invest and the amount of interest I get. So it's $2, or 2 here, sorry, not $2, but 2 in the difference, and it's 100 in the difference. So 2 divided by 100 is 1 over 50, or 0.02. So that is going to be my coefficient. Or if I wanted to, I over 50. Okay. Now for the last part of that, it says how much interest would you earn on a $120,000 investment? So if your investment is here, then $120,000 will be substituted into there to determine how much interest. Or if you use this equation, you could take $120,000 and substitute it there to calculate your interest. Okay? So when we do that all out, it works out to be 2,400 equals I. Or if you invest $120,000 at 2% interest, you will receive $2,400 at the end of the year.